I know all this because I went through it, every last thought, every last feeling. I felt completely defeated. It was the worst thing I had ever experienced. No exceptions. Acting on a tip I'd received earlier that day, I pulled into the parking lot of a cheap one-story motel. I immediately felt sick and fought not to throw up when I saw my wife's car parked outside one of the rooms. I sandwiched my car between two others in the far corner of the parking lot and waited. Over the next 20 minutes, I asked myself each of these questions, felt each of these feelings, and cried until my heart shattered into pieces. I watched as my beautiful wife walked out of one of the rooms holding hands with her boss. I grabbed the camera from the passenger seat and started taking pictures of them as they hugged each other for a goodbye kiss. As a professional photographer, I rarely used autofocus, but thank goodness for this feature, because otherwise there was no way I would have been able to take a clear photo through my tears. The powerful telephoto lens allowed me to focus on Jean's face as she looked with loving eyes at her lover. I don't know why, but I kept filming. Just a reflex, I guess. When they left in different cars, I could do nothing but sit. Why didn't I run and punch that bastard in the face? I was angry at myself, but the truth was that I was so overwhelmed that I didn't even think about it. I sat there replaying the scene I had just seen over and over in my head. If I didn't have the evidence lying around, I would have doubted my own sanity and thought I was hallucinating. I wondered how long this had been going on. Are they in love, or is it just a physical attraction? Then I realized it didn't matter. My marriage is over. I felt lost. The whole body began to shake, and tears flowed with renewed vigor. I slammed my palm on the steering wheel in frustration. I think the last time I cried this hard was when I lost my best friend, my lifelong partner. It was a beautiful Doberman named Brooklyn. He was my protector and constant companion every day of my life until one morning when he did not wake up. I was 10 years old. What now, I thought, trying to pull myself together. My thoughts went back to the conversation we had recently about starting a family. When we got married, I was just starting my career in commercial photography, so we decided to wait to have kids because we needed Jean's salary. Since then, however, I have been able to steadily grow the business to a six-figure income. Since 99% of my work was done on location, I didn't need a studio. I worked from home, which not only saved money, but also provided excellent tax benefits. Overall, we didn't need Jean's salary anymore, so we talked about her quitting and becoming a stay-at-home mom. I thought she would be delighted, but to my surprise, she was reluctant, saying that she needed a little more time to get used to the idea. Now, after what I saw, I believe she had another reason for not wanting to quit. I took a deep breath and exhaled with a heavy sigh. I wanted children with all my heart, but maybe this will be better, I thought. Just when I decided to just go home and show Jean the photos I had just taken, my cell phone rang. I looked at the display and saw that it was Jack Northrup, an old friend. Several years ago, I worked as a staff photographer for one of the state's largest newspapers. Jack was an investigator, one of the best. We worked on several assignments together and remained good friends ever since. At first, I was going to not pick up the phone and let the call go to voicemail. But then I thought, why not? I really need a friend now. Hi, I replied, trying to sound normal, obviously not very successfully. Hey, buddy, are you okay? You sound a little down. Is everything okay? I was hesitant. Do I really want to advertise the fact that my wife is cheating on me? Damn, I thought, people will find out soon anyway. This is not something that can be hidden for long. No, Jack, it's actually crap, I said. I'm sorry to hear that, Dalton. Is there anything I can do for you? He asked. Honestly, Jack, I just need someone to talk to. Listen, I was just calling to see if you could meet me for a beer at Plateau Place in a little while. When can you get out? Oh crap, I said, just realizing what time it was. I'm already late. I had to meet a client and take some pictures of new houses. He's a developer. Screw it, I'm going to call and tell him it's fatal I'm sick. It won't be a lie, believe me. I'll call him right now and reschedule the meeting. I can be at Plateau in 20 minutes, I told him. See you there, my friend. As soon as we hung up, I called my client and rescheduled the shoot. He wasn't happy, but I still couldn't concentrate on my work. Jack was already sitting at the bar when I entered. He didn't say anything. He probably didn't want to embarrass me, but the first thing he did was look into my eyes. They must have still been red and puffy from crying. "Why don't you grab a beer and then let's go over there," he said, pointing to a table in the back of the room. "It'll be a little more private. You can tell what's going on." It was difficult to speak. We both sat in silence for a few minutes while I tried to decide where to start. I, I had an appointment today. It was close to where Jean works and I had some time, so I stopped by there around 12 to see if she was free for lunch. Beverly, one of the girls she works with, said I just missed her. She had already left for lunch. When I asked her if she knew where Jean went, she said she didn't know, but that's how she did it. She said, "I don't know, it was strange, as if she was hiding something." I paused for a second and took a sip of my beer, taking a deep breath, trying not to cry again. Talking about your wife sleeping with another man is not easy at all. Anyway, as I said, I felt some strange vibrations from her, and on the way out another woman came up to me. I hadn't seen her before, but apparently she didn't like Jean very much, because she told me if I want to find my wife, I have to go to the Holly Motel on Dempster. At first, I thought she meant that Jean was having lunch there, but then I found out the name. It was some cheap room I've driven past a million times, and knew there was no restaurant there. I went there, and of course, Jean's car was in the parking lot. "Oh, Dalton, I'm sorry. Hell, I can't imagine Jean cheating on you. Are you sure it's her car?" "It was Jean's car. It has personalized plates," I replied. "Damn, what did you do?" "What could I do? I didn't know what room she was in. I parked at the far end of the parking lot, where she wouldn't be likely to see me, and waited. I waited about 20 minutes when she came out holding hands with Irv Jackson, this her boss. Look, if this guy is her boss, maybe he forced her, sleep with me or I'll fire you. Something like that," Jack said, trying to give me hope. "I don't think so. When I say boss, I'm using the term loosely. He's not really her boss. I mean, he doesn't have the authority to fire her or anything. He's an outside sales representative who travels around the country, sells industrial lighting. When he receives an order, he sends it to the company. Jean processes it and makes sure everything is sent out. God, I just can't believe it. Jean loves you, man. You had a big fight or something. Why would she do that?" Why? That's what I'm asking myself. Why? And to answer your question, no, we haven't had any big fights. She's been a little irritable the last few months, but we haven't really fought. "So what are you going to do?" "Divorce, probably. I'm definitely not going to stay married to a woman who doesn't love or respect me." We both sat in silence for a few minutes before Jack spoke again. "How bad do you want revenge?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "Well, I mean, if it were me, I'd be out for blood, man. I'd be out for revenge. On both him and her. I know you're in a lot of pain right now, but I can't believe it. That you are not angry." "Of course I'm angry," I replied, a little annoyed at what I thought was a stupid question. "What are you getting at?" "Do you have evidence of betrayal?" "Hell yeah. Well, not really proof. I have a few pictures of them kissing as they left the room." "No, that's not enough. You need enough evidence for probable cause," Jack said. "Probable cause? I give up, Jack. What the hell are you talking about?" "This is Illinois. Adultery is illegal in this state, my dear friend," he said with a grin. "Seriously? This was news to me." "You are sure?" "Absolutely. It's a misdemeanor. They'll probably never be prosecuted, but between you and me, we know 30 or 40 cops. I'm sure we can get them arrested and put in jail for a day or so. Maybe we'll even get the newspaper to print the story." Jack looked at me and realized that he had my attention. "Think about it. If they do get arrested, it will be newsworthy. I'm sure I can get the newspaper to print the story. If you're there with your camera, I might even get them to print the photo. Want a subtitle?" he asked with a devilish smile. With all the agony I was going through, I wasn't even thinking about revenge, but suddenly it started to seem pretty tempting. You'll need to gather evidence. You need enough for probable cause. Damn, how am I supposed to do this? I asked, forgetting for a moment that I was sitting with one of the best investigative journalists. Does she have a smartphone? He asked. Yes, exclusively. We don't even use a landline anymore, I replied. Okay, I know they work together, but I bet they still communicate on the phone. Text messages, calls, photos, something like that. They're not cheap, 200 or 300 bucks, but you can go to the internet and buy spy software for her phone. It's a little device that you connect to her phone and then download the program. It literally takes seconds. It allows you to track incoming and outgoing calls, text messages, dates in her calendar, all sorts of things. The best ones even turn her phone into a listening device like a bug. If they're in range, you can hear everything they say to each other. It even allows you to track her using GPS, and you can track it all from your computer. Are you kidding me? Is this legal? Well, technically no, he thought for a second. Is the phone in your name or hers? He asked. In my, well, company name, to be precise. What? Well, you should warn everyone on the call that it is being recorded, but there is a small provision about recording calls made for illegal purposes. Since adultery is a crime, you can claim that your phone was used for illegal purposes. Are you sure? Telephone tapping is a federal crime. Hell, I might end up in more trouble than both of them. Jack thought for a moment before answering. Don't worry about it, Dalton. Go buy this device. When the time comes to catch them, you will anonymously give me their room number. I will contact the police and tell them that I believe the room is being used for criminal activities, and that's it. I thought for a second, do you really think this will work? Look, half the cops in Chicagoland owe me. We'll do this. I probably fell silent, but I had complete faith in Jack. He wouldn't propose such a plan if he didn't know he could pull it off. But do I really want to do it? He must have read my thoughts. I understand, he said sympathetically. Are you wondering if you really want her to be arrested? He took a sip of his beer. That, my friend, is up to you. It's pretty radical, I know. I nodded my head, agreeing with his last statement. Even if you don't want to arrest her, I'd still buy that spy device and find out exactly what's going on. Who knows, what you saw could be completely innocent, he said, knowing that neither of us doesn't believe in it. We didn't talk for long after that. I needed to think it over, and Jack needed to go home to his wife and children. I thought about what he said about this spy device for her phone and decided it was a good idea. As unlikely as it was, I prayed that he was right about innocence. Yeah, of course, I didn't waste any time and ordered this thing that Jack was talking about. I always carried a laptop with me. I mostly used it to edit photos on the spot, but I could get online from anywhere by connecting it to my smartphone, which I did as soon as I got back in the car. It didn't take long to find what Jack was talking about. There were plenty of them. I found one that could serve as a listening device, as he mentioned, and paid extra to have it delivered the next day with special instructions that it be kept in the post office for me. It was a little weird, but I felt a little better after it. One of the feelings that I forgot to mention earlier was the feeling of control, or more accurately, the lack of it. Finding out that your wife is cheating really makes you realize how little control you have over your life, even for guys like me who thought they had everything under control. Now, at least I was doing something. I was getting some control back. All that evening, I tried to spend as much time as possible away from Jean. I tried to act normal, but unless you've tried it yourself, you have no idea how difficult it is when your whole world is falling apart around you. I went into my office and pretended to be editing photos from some imaginary big shooting day. I waited until I was sure Jean was fast asleep before I went to bed. Her body, so close to mine, was tearing me apart again. I eventually dozed off, but not before shedding more tears. The next day, I almost failed my first job because I just couldn't concentrate on what I was doing. Even the client asked me if everything was okay. I did my best to stay focused and then headed to the post office around 3. I showed my ID to the pretty girl behind the counter and said that they should have my package in storage. 5 minutes later, she came out of the back room with it in her hands. I opened it like a kid at Christmas. I read the instructions, and later that night, I downloaded the spyware onto her phone. I set it up so that I could track everything from my laptop, and it didn't take long before I hit the mark. I had already checked my phone several times early in the morning to no avail, but around 10:30 I saw that Irv had sent my wife a text, even though she had not responded yet. Irv, hey beautiful, I have a pretty easy schedule on Friday. Would you like to meet? If she says yes, I'll have 2 days to plan. The problem was that I didn't yet know what I was going to do. I had just leaned my head back on the car seat to think when I heard the phone ring. Hello, he replied, that same bastard. Hi, it's me. I received your message, but Beverly was standing right next to me and I couldn't answer. My loving wife replied. Damn, Jean, she must know something by now. She's not stupid. Yes, I know, she replied, but don't rub it in her nose. She even covered for me the other day. Told Dalton that I had already left for lunch when he came to pick me up a couple days ago. She told him that I had already left and didn't know where I went. Well, that's probably true, he chuckled. Yes, I know, and now I'm wondering why Dalton didn't tell me he stopped by. He's actually been quiet the last couple of nights. Don't you think he suspects something? God, it would kill him if he found out about us. Damn, Jean, you live with him, not me. What do you think? I haven't seen him since the company picnic a couple of months ago. He didn't seem suspicious then, in fact. We had a great chat about how fast kids grow. Yes, I know. He told me about it when we got home. He said he thought you were a good father. Now you're making me feel guilty. Damn it. I love your husband. Yes, I think he treats you well too. Like you said, maybe I just feel guilty. I remembered how he came to pick me up for lunch while you and I were together, and it reminded me of what we really do. At the very beginning, it all seemed like just harmless fun, but now there is no doubt that we are both cheating on our spouses. God, I don't even want to think about what will happen if they ever find out. I don't know about Marge, but it will kill Dalton. I don't think he'll ever forgive me, Irv. We're really playing with fire here. Yes, Marge too. Hell, she would probably kick me out of the house forever. Do you think we should take a break? There was a long silence on both sides before Jean answered him. Actually, I've been a little nervous the last few months. Maybe that's why he's so quiet. Every time he opens his mouth, I seem to lash out at him. I think I used it as a defense mechanism, you know. The closer we are as a couple, the more guilty I feel. So if I can create distance between us, I don't feel as guilty. But this is wrong. I need to stop this. Dalton didn't deserve me to treat him like that. So, what do you think? Should we meet on Friday or not? Irv asked her. Yes, we are planning on Friday, but maybe we should take a break after that. I need to get my relationship back on track with my husband. I really love this big fool, you know, she said. I heard Irv chuckle from the other side of the phone. Yeah, I know you love him. I love my wife too. Okay, Friday, usual time, and then we'll take a break for a while. Okay, she replied. Are you coming to the office today? No, not today. I have everything planned. I'll be there tomorrow, but only around 4, he replied. The rest of the conversation was about business. I slowly lowered the lid of my laptop. There were only 2 days left until Friday. If I wanted to get them arrested, I needed to call Jack right now, so he would have time to arrange everything. I leaned forward and rested my head on the steering wheel to think. There was so much to consider. Maybe I could just turn a blind eye to it, just for once. It looks like this will be the last time, at least for a while, and she actually said she loved me. Maybe I could let it all cool down and then tell Jean that I knew about the cheating and ask her not to do it again. No, I thought as the anger flared again, what the hell am I thinking? I'm not going to live like this in constant anxiety, worrying where she is every time she's 10 minutes late. Nonsense, I can't live like this. I won't live like this. After 2 days of deliberation, the final decision was made in an instant. Hello, can I speak to Jack Northrup, please? I covered the phone with a handkerchief. I don't know if it actually changed my voice, but they always do that in detective films, so why not? Yes, may I know who is calling? Asked the voice on the other end of the line. No, just tell him that I have information about illegal activity that will be happening on Friday. 1 minute, please, he replied before yelling to Jack that there was an anonymous call on line 3. This is Jack Northrup. How can I help you? I won't tell you my name, Mr. Northrup, but I wanted to let you know that there will be some illegal activity going on in one of the rooms at the Holly Motel on Dempster this Friday around noon. I understand, Jack replied. I will organize the police to investigate. Well, it was done. Now I just had to live with this decision. I also had to live with Jean for the next 2 days. How I was going to do that I didn't know. She seemed like she was going to be nice to me when she talked to Irv. She can be very romantic when she wants. I imagined her snuggled up to me on the sofa, perhaps with a glass of wine. When we get to bed, nothing can stop her. She knew my weaknesses and how to exploit them. God, how I'm going to miss her, I thought, before more tears found their way down my face. I thought about it for a few minutes and then came up with a solution. Although I never did it in such haste, from time to time I had to leave the city. I've already canceled everything I had planned for the rest of the week. I went home and packed my bag. It wasn't long before I was at a motel a few miles from home before hitting the speed dial button. I opened my laptop and was ready to connect to the phone as soon as I finished the call. Hi, honey, she replied, sounding like she was in a good mood. I was just thinking about you. Your ears must have been burning. You were thinking, I said, trying to sound cheerful. And what were you thinking? Well, things have been crazy at work the last few months, and I'm afraid that I took it out on you, so I'd like to fix it. I was thinking that maybe we could check into a nice hotel for the weekend, and you and I could have 2 full days and nights of wild, passionate, mind-blowing sex. As far as I can see, none of us should be able to walk by Monday, she said, laughing. Under normal circumstances, my heart would have started racing at her words, but knowing the full picture, it only made me even sadder. I tried to use this sadness as a tool for play when I replied, Honey, I'm sorry to say, but I won't be here this weekend. Won't it? She almost screamed. What do you mean? Where are you going? Well, I just got an assignment from out of town, honey. I'm sorry, but the money is too good to pass up. I'm already on my way and won't be back until late Saturday night. She didn't say a word for a good 15 to 20 seconds. Honey, what's going on? This doesn't sound like you, she finally said, sounding worried. I didn't want to ruin everything now. I'm not an actor, but I had to put on a real performance. Nothing happened, dear. It just happened, I said, trying to make it important. You can't bear it. I was really looking forward to this weekend, honey. Honey, this is a chance to take a big hit from Hubbard, one of the biggest studios in town, I said, making it up as I went along. Everything was set for a big commercial shoot tomorrow in Logan County, but Hubbard somehow messed up the schedule and can't show up. It will cost the client thousands of dollars if not done. Someone recommended it to me. If I go there and save the shoot, it could mean getting a new client worth $100,000 a year. Darling, I can't refuse this. I heard her sigh, then there was silence before she spoke. Okay, she said with what sounded like real sadness in her voice. I understand. I think we can do it next week. As soon as we said goodbye and kissed each other through the phone, I opened the internet and connected to my laptop. I was sure she would contact Irv right away, but nothing happened. She must have put the phone on the table because when I activated the listening device, I heard her shuffling papers. Irv just faxed these purchase orders. He wants you to look at them and make sure we have everything in stock. If not, he wants you to call him, I heard someone say. Then I heard my wife's voice. Okay, thank you, Beverly. I heard no response. Then my wife spoke again. Beverly, what happened? We used to be friends, but you haven't said a single friendly word to me for several months. Please, what's going on? Okay, since you asked, I thought you were a good person. You have a wonderful husband, and you turned your back to him. He deserves better. "You're just an easy girl," she said with maximum anger in her voice. I heard Jean gasp at that statement. Then, as it seemed to me, Beverly came out of her office. My wife began to cry quietly. I was worried that her colleague's words had suddenly awakened Jean's sense of morality, and she might cancel her little meeting. I waited for her to call Irv, but all she did was cry quietly. I continued to monitor my wife's communications to make sure the cops weren't raiding the empty room on Friday, but the only other conversation she had with Irv was on Thursday afternoon when he came into the office. They talked mostly about business. It wasn't until the end of the conversation that Jean expressed regret about starting their affair, but when asked again about the next day, she again confirmed that it would be their last meeting for a while. I didn't sleep at all on Thursday night. I kept asking myself if I was doing the right thing. Maybe with counseling we could put this behind us. Maybe, what if? I used these words a lot in my thoughts all night, but when I saw the room brighten with the morning sun, I knew my marriage was over. It was revenge. On him and her. Maybe she will understand how much she hurt me when she is taken away in handcuffs. But then I doubted, unless you have been through it yourself, you will never understand the pain that a person goes through. At 11 a.m. Friday morning, I met with my small private response team at our predetermined location behind the restaurant across the street. Jack was there with Dave Wyland, our local police sergeant, and a mutual friend of ours whom we had known for years. With him was another officer who looked familiar, but I didn't know his name, and a rather strong female officer. Dave introduced us and said that they had already spoken to the hotel manager. He will put them in room 113. Dave already had a key card for the room. We'll give them about 20 minutes before we launch the raid. Dave already had a complaint form ready and waiting for my signature. At about 11:30, a car pulled into the motel and a man walked into the office, but I couldn't positively identify him from across the street. He returned to his car and apparently waited, and sure enough, there she is, I said, recognizing Jean's car pulling into the parking lot. She parked next to another car and waited for Irv. He stepped out of the car with a small suitcase and kissed Jean on the cheek before they disappeared out the door of number 113. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Dave asked. "You can still change your mind." "Yeah," Jack said. "If you do this, there's no going back, Dalton." "I know," I said sadly. "I've been thinking about it all night." I set the camera to autofocus. "Let's get this over with," I said. With that, we all loaded into 2 patrol cars and drove into the motel parking lot, blocking both of their cars. "Police, we're coming in," Dave shouted, slamming his fist on the door twice. Almost immediately, another officer swiped the key card and they rushed inside. Jack and I waited for the others to come in before going in. I saw Irv through the doorway as he jumped out of bed, naked as the day he was born. "I know what it's like, but it's all consensual," he shouted. "Honestly, Jin, tell them I didn't force you. You have to believe me," he said very quickly. At the same time, Jean was panicking, screaming at Irv to explain what was happening. That's when I walked in and saw her. She was lying on her back, completely naked, with her arms stretched above her head and handcuffed to the head of the bed. "Irv, please. Oh God, what's going on? Please tell me," she screamed in hysterics. Irv was too busy trying to explain the situation to the cops and to answer her. He was so engrossed in his chatter that he didn't even notice my presence until I started taking pictures. He saw the flash and turned in my direction, looking like he had seen a ghost. "Oh shit," he said, finally realizing what was happening. "What?" Jean begged again. "Tell me what's going on, please." Jean was now crying in fear. "This is Dalton," Irv told her sadly. "No," she screamed. No, this can't be. Oh God, no." By that time, Dave and the other officer had pulled Irv aside so the female officer could approach Jean. "Where are the keys to these handcuffs?" she asked. "They're on the table," Irv answered with his head down. As soon as the handcuffs were removed, Jean tore off the blindfold with a look of absolute horror on her face. "No, oh God, no," she cried, covering her face with her hands. She didn't even try to cover herself. I don't know if it was from shock or she just decided it was too late for that. The female officer lifted half the sheet and threw it over Jean. Irv Jackson, Jean Conrad, I am arresting you both for adultery, Dave told them. Arrest? Treason. Wait a minute, Irv shouted. You can't arrest us for treason. It's not illegal. I'm afraid so, and so can we, Mr. Jackson. Now get dressed, Dave told him, leading him to a pile of men's clothes on the floor. While he was getting dressed, a female officer walked around the bed to untie my wife. Dalton, listen, buddy, I'm sorry, none of us meant to hurt you, but please make it stop, Irv begged, his own tears now streaming down his face. Please think about my family, my children. You damn bastard, I screamed, and Jack grabbed me to keep me from getting too close and hitting him. You didn't think about my family, did you? What about my marriage? What about my children, those who will now never be born? Bastard, I hope they lock you up and throw away the key, I screamed. I heard Jin sob and turn into an uncontrollable sob as my pain became obvious through my screaming. She didn't even try to beg. She already knew it was over. I heard her repeat how sorry she was over and over again, between sobs, but unfortunately it was too little, too late. Much too late. Once Irv was dressed, he was handcuffed, and we all went outside to have a female officer help Jean get dressed. About 10 minutes later, the door opened, and she brought out my wife, also in handcuffs. Our eyes met for a moment as she was placed in the back seat of the police car. It's hard to say which of us had a more sorrowful face. We both knew this was the end of our dreams and our future together. That's it, the show is over, Dave shouted to the small crowd that had gathered. Go on your way. He turned to me as the group of onlookers began to disperse. There is no need to go to the station, he told me. We already have your complaint. I nodded sadly. What will happen now? I asked him. They will be processed and kept in a cell until late at night. Then they will be released on their own recognizance, but most likely this will not be earlier than 2 or 3 in the morning. Once scheduled, all participants will be notified of the court date. I'm sure the DA will call you, but frankly, Dalton, I doubt they'll want to prosecute them. Yes, I said, trying not to cry in front of everyone. I thought so. You said it wouldn't be released until 2 or 3, so late, how will she get home? It's strange, with all the thoughts about the arrest itself, I never thought about what would happen after. She'll have to call a taxi, Dave said. Normally, I would send a tow truck and confiscate the cars, but that would cost you, not her, so I'll just leave both cars here. Unless you want to follow us to the station in her car and leave it at our parking lot. I'm sure Jack would give you a ride back to your car. Can you just repossess his car then? I asked. Yes, we can. We weren't in the best area, and I really didn't want Jean to come back here at 2 in the morning, so that's what we did. Once we were all back at the station, Dave showed Jean where her car would be parked when she was released later that night. Our eyes met again as I approached Jack's car. I had never seen such sad eyes in my life. Dave, I know I'm being insolent, but can I ask you one more favor? I asked. Of course, Dalton, he replied. You could make sure they don't leave at the same time. I don't want that bastard asking her for a ride home. No problem, buddy. I'll make sure he's released an hour or 2 after Jean. Thanks. Oh, and I don't mind if he gets put in a cell with some big black guy named Bubba, who loves to initiate white guys into the prison system, I said with a tight smile. I'll see what I can do, Dave replied, returning my smile. On the way to my car, I took out my phone and made a call. Worthington Corporation, the operator announced. Beverly Billings, please, I replied. Just a minute. Hi, this is Beverly. How can I help you? Beverly, this is Dalton Conrad. I just wanted to let you know that neither my wife nor Irv Jackson will be coming to work today. They're both in jail. In prison, she said, sounding worried. What did they do? You know very well what they have done and have been doing for some time. Adultery is illegal in this state, you know. Oh, and wanted to say thank you, Beverly. If I ever find out that your husband is cheating on you, I will do everything I can to hide it from you, like you did to me. I said with maximum contempt in my voice. Dalton, I hung up on this bitch. As far as I'm concerned, she was also part of my wife's betrayal. To hell with her. Jack and I stopped for lunch, but I wasn't particularly hungry. I finished about half a burger and a bottle of beer. Jack was a true gentleman and never once mentioned the bondage scene we had just seen, but it kept replaying in my head. I was completely shocked. 7 years of marriage, and I had no idea she was involved in this. Jack said I should just get drunk and go home with him. As tempting as it sounded, I wasn't about to start feeling sorry for myself. If I start doing this, I may never stop. I have a business to run and a marriage to end. I just don't have time for self-pity. I have no idea how many times I entered my house when it was empty, probably hundreds. But this time everything was different. It was not just empty, it was lonely. It seemed as if the house itself felt my grief. Grief oozed from the walls, and sadness hung in the air like a suffocating fog. I walked down the hallway towards the bedroom, lost in memories of laughter and happy times. By the time I reached the room, my face was covered in the salty marks of memories from the past. I collapsed under the weight of my breaking heart and sobbed until I fell asleep on the very bed I had once shared with the only woman I had ever loved. I tried to open my eyes, but they were so covered with dried tears that it was difficult to do. I wiped the dry crust from my eyelids and blinked several times, trying to wash away the film that had dried on my eyes. I was still dressed, but my body felt cold and clammy. I felt the damp pillowcase under my cheek as I tried to figure out where I was. I looked at the clock next to my bed and saw that it was 4 in the morning. I lay there trying to remember what day it was. It was Saturday. That's when everything came flooding back to me, and my eyes were filled with the moisture of despair again. After a few minutes, I staggered towards the bathroom to wash my face. The cold water gradually brought me back to life, and I began to remember the events of the previous day. It was a little after 5 o'clock in the evening when I fell onto the mattress. Damn, I thought, I slept for 11 hours. I must have been completely emotionally drained and not even realized it. I wondered if Jean had made it home after being released from prison. She had nowhere to go at this hour unless she was staying at a motel, but I thought I made it clear to her that she had to come home. After all, we needed to discuss the terms of the divorce. There was no point in putting it off. If we can act like two civilized people over the weekend and work things out, I can see my lawyer on Monday. I quickly showered and put on casual clothes. I looked into the guest bedroom to see if she was there, but the room was untouched. I was a little worried, but not as much as usual. She was now a free person, or at least would soon be, and it was no longer my job to worry about her. I went downstairs to make coffee. As soon as I walked down the last steps and turned the corner, I saw her lying on the sofa. I walked up and looked down at her. I have never seen her in such a state. Not only her eyes, but her whole face was red and swollen. Her makeup was terribly smudged and dried out in such a way that she looked like a very sad clown. Her usually soft brown hair seemed darker and matted from the tears she had shed while probably lying in her cell. My God, how I wanted to hug her, kiss her, and tell her that everything would be fine. Instead, I gathered my courage and went to the kitchen to make coffee. I sat at the head of the table where I could look through the doorway and see her. I think she was having bad dreams, because from time to time her hand would twitch convulsively, or she would scream quietly. I had already drunk my 3rd cup and still couldn't gather my thoughts. I needed some kind of distraction. I looked out the window and saw the first glimpses of dawn. Just a few blocks away, there was a park with a beautiful little lake. I've been there many times, but never at dawn. I grabbed my camera and walked there. I just needed time to think. The morning turned out to be very productive. By the time the sun came out, I had already chosen my locations and took some picturesque shots of the early morning sun playing on the water and through the trees. As I was about to head home, I saw 2 football teams getting kitted out at the other end of the park. I spent the next couple of hours taking some great action shots. I gave my business card to both coaches and told them that if they contacted me, I would send them a test sheet with photos. Between the coaches who would want photos for the team and the individual players who would want photos for themselves, I was confident that I would make a few $100s for the morning's efforts. I was leaving the park when I saw Judy Anderson, who lived a couple of streets away. I heard that she was pregnant, but did not see her to congratulate her. I think my information was correct because she was walking behind the baby carriage. "Judy," I called, approaching. "Congratulations on your gift from God," I said, looking into the stroller. "Hi, Dalton. Thank you very much," she said proudly. "Is it a boy or a girl?" "A boy, Stephen Gregory," she answered. "He will be 3 weeks old tomorrow." "He's just beautiful," I said. Of course, seeing her with her newborn son, I only remembered what I had lost. Even before we got married, I dreamed of Jean and I being proud parents, but now it doesn't look like that will ever happen. "Judy, the sun is still quite low, great for portraits. Would you like a couple of shots of you and Stephen to your home without payment?" "Oh, Dalton, really?" she asked, delighted. "Of course. Why don't you sit under that tree, and I'll take you with him in your arms? Is that normal?" "As you say, you're a photographer," she said with even more enthusiasm. I chose a nice grassy spot where the sun was shining behind her, highlighting her blonde hair and the contours of her body. I added a little flash to soften the harsh shadows and took one of the most beautiful photos I've had in a long time. I only took 2 shots before little Stephen started fidgeting. "He's probably hungry," said his mother. "I think we'll have to go home. I'd be too embarrassed to feed him here," she said with a smile. "Oh, why would you be embarrassed?" I asked without thinking. "Well, I'm breastfeeding," she said a little shyly. "Oh, damn, Judy, there's no one here but these guys." I pointed at the football players, "and they're too far away to see anything. Just cover yourself with a diaper and that's it. I'll go away and give you some privacy," I told her. "Oh, before you go, well." It was obvious that she wanted to say something, but was either embarrassed or afraid to say it. "Yes," I said, drawing out the word and trying to joke a little. "Well, you know what I always liked?" I shook my head. "These photographs of mothers feeding their children," she finally said. "Do you want a picture of yourself feeding little Stephen?" I asked, trying not to show my embarrassment. Judy was younger than Jean and me, maybe 23 or 24 years old. She and her husband were practically newlyweds when they bought the house a couple of years ago. She was stunningly beautiful, and I tried to stop myself from getting excited at the mere thought of seeing her breasts. She looked at me embarrassed. "Do you mind?" "No, not at all. I'll look away until you're ready." I heard her move a little. "Okay, I'm ready," she said. I turned around and saw Stephen in his mother's arms, suckling. The problem was that she was wearing a large, heavy white nursing bra that ruined the shot. I took a few pictures, but I knew it wasn't what she really wanted. I just said straight out, "Judy, your bra is ruining the shot. I know what kind of photo you want, and frankly, this nursing bra is not suitable." She looked down at the bra and then suddenly looked up with a surprised expression on her face. "Do you want me to take it off?" she asked, looking startled. I shrugged slightly. "I'm not trying to be a pervert, but if you want the photo to look natural, the bra needs to be removed," I said. She hesitated, but only for a few seconds. "Here," she said, handing me the baby. "Can you hold Stephen while I take him off?" I'll be honest, if someone had told me as I was leaving the house that I would be holding the baby while his beautiful mother took off her bra for me, I would have laughed in their face. But here I stood, holding this little miracle in my hands and silently praying that one day I would have one of my own. When she was ready, I gave the child back to the mother. She pressed him to her chest. I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as I looked through the viewfinder at nature's most amazing miracle, the miracle of life. As I told Judy after the shoot, I've been a professional photographer for 20 years. I've taken thousands of photographs, but I've never taken anything more beautiful. I asked if her husband would mind if I gave them a framed photograph measuring 16 by 20 inches so they could hang it up. Tears of joy appeared in her eyes when she sincerely thanked me and said that she and her husband would be proud of such a gift. On the way back home, I was engrossed in what I had just seen. Will such happiness ever be granted to me, I thought. Will I ever feel the thrill of holding my own baby? A cold fear came over me as soon as I began to think about it. When I got home, I saw Jean through the glass patio doors. She turned when she heard me enter. I noticed that she had taken a shower, but was not wearing makeup. Her face was still a little swollen, but she looked more like my wife than before. "Hi, Dalton," she said, almost breaking into tears as she said the words. I, I drank all the coffee. Now I'll make some more for you. It'll only take a couple of minutes. "Did you have breakfast?" she asked in a barely audible voice. "No, why don't you make us some scrambled eggs, and then we'll talk," I said, walking through the kitchen into my office. I took a few minutes to go through all the pictures I had just taken and prepared them for later processing. Jean was just setting the table when I returned. Her whole body was literally shaking. Apart from a few sobs from Jean, breakfast was fairly quiet. When we finished, I loaded the dishes into the dishwasher, poured us more coffee, and sat back down. "Dalton," she began, almost unable to speak. "I know." She began to cry. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." She burst into tears, hanging her head and unable to look me in the eyes. So sorry. Please, please tell me, darling. I'm begging you for forgiveness, please. I don't want to lose you." "It was stupid. I'm really sorry," she said, before completely breaking down and bursting into tears. No matter how much my heart was broken, there was still a piece of it that beat only for her. I got up and brought her a box of tissues and then stood next to her for a while. The loving husband in me wanted to hold her, to comfort her, but the wounded husband, the one who carried so much pain within himself, simply could not do it. Without saying a word, I returned to my seat and watched as she tried to pull herself together. She understood from my reaction to her pleas that there was no chance of reconciliation. She wiped away her tears. "This won't happen, right? No chance for us, right?" she asked, still looking down. "I'm afraid not, Jean. I'm sorry. When I first saw you with Irv, I thought I was going to die. I have never been so destroyed by anything in my life. I won't say that I don't love you anymore, because I do, but it is love that is crippled. It can no longer function. I can never love a person who hurt me so deeply." Still wiping away tears, she just nodded, accepting what she already knew. The man she loved so much wanted her out of his life, just as she was out of his. "I knew when you ordered us to be arrested that you already told me then that it was all over. I was so scared, I didn't even understand at first why we were being arrested. But when this policewoman told me my rights and told me what we were accused of, I realized that I had lost the man I love," she sobbed. "It was quite difficult for me. I had to ask this question, but I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Why, Jin, damn it, we were so damn happy together. We were so perfect for each other. Why did you do this to us? What did I do to deserve this?" I said, unsuccessfully trying to hold back my tears again. "Oh God, Dalton, you did nothing to deserve this. Absolutely nothing, darling. It was stupidity on my part. It's as simple as that," she said with conviction. "You yourself saw me in that hotel room. He tied me up. It was all about this, a feeling of helplessness. I was just curious, that's all, curious and too embarrassed to talk to you about it." "I don't understand. You were too embarrassed to talk to me, but not to Irv Peterson. Damn it, why was it easier for you to talk to him than to your husband? This doesn't make sense. Did he persuade you?" I'm sure by this time Jean could see the anger starting to show on my face. "No, he didn't persuade me. Not exactly, but he was already interested in such things," she said, and then changed her mind. "Well, not exactly interested, but he had such fantasies. She seemed frustrated that she couldn't explain herself, fiddling with the napkin in her hands. "Do you remember when Irv and I went to that lighting show downtown? God, it was almost a year ago. Have you been doing this all this time?" I asked, clenching my fist. She shook her head. No, not really." I jumped up from the table in anger. "What do you mean, not really? Jen, come on. Either it was or it wasn't." She flinched at my outburst. "We just talked about it, and that's it. We talked about it, but nothing happened for several months," she quickly interjected. Irv left me alone at our booth at the exhibition for some time. I didn't know where he was and left my phone in the room he rented as a base. I was talking to someone who I thought was a potential client, a major client, but he was asking questions that I couldn't answer. Finally, I asked if he could wait a few minutes so I could go up to the room and see if Irv was back. When I entered the room, Irv was nowhere to be found, but his laptop was on the table, and I thought I could get the answers to the man's questions myself. I finally sat down at the table again and tried to pull myself together while listening. The laptop was in standby mode, and when I opened it, a bondage site appeared on the screen. At first I was shocked, but when I looked at all these photographs of women tied up. But then, I don't know, something happened. I'm ashamed to admit, but I was so excited that I couldn't believe it. I started clicking on thumbnails to make the pictures bigger. Some girls were fully clothed, but others were completely naked. They were tied up in a variety of positions. Irv entered. His face turned bright red when he realized I was watching. I would guess my face was probably just as red. She stopped again, feeling that she was about to lose her temper. She wiped away fresh tears and continued. Anyway, I tried to diffuse the situation a little. I jokingly asked him if he does this with Marge when the kids are asleep. After he faltered, he said that it was just one of his fantasies, but Marge knew nothing about it. I think I looked a little surprised because then he said, "I can tell you honestly, I'm just a pervert at heart," and then he laughed. I left it and told him about the man waiting at our booth. When I got home that evening, I wanted to talk to you so much about trying some of that sex, but I was so ashamed that I couldn't bring myself to do it. I remembered what Irv said about him being a pervert, and I didn't want you to think badly of me, so I just tried to forget about it for a while. Her hand shook as she took another sip of coffee. The problem was that my interest increased. I started looking at some sites myself, and every time I did it, I got excited. I tried to think of ways to hint this to you. I even thought about leaving my computer like Irv did, but you would have no reason to look at my computer unless I asked, and then it would be too obvious. I probably tried to raise this topic a dozen times, but each time I lost the courage. Jean took another napkin and blew her nose. She still found it difficult to speak. And then one day we were in Irv's office working on purchase orders, and I asked him if he'd ever had sex like that. He said yes, once when he was in college. He dated a girl for a couple of months who was into it. He said he liked it, but then she left him for another guy, and he met Marge, who was pretty strict, so he just left it as a fantasy all these years, and that was it. He asked me if we were doing something like that, and I said no. I said I never even thought about it until I saw it on his computer. We talked some more, and he got me to admit that I wouldn't mind trying it just once. He asked if I discussed this with you. I said no, I was just too embarrassed. He said he had the same problem. Hell, if I told Marge I wanted to tie her up, she'd probably hit me over the head with a frying pan, he said with a smile. She took another sip of her coffee and seemed to begin to calm down a little as she continued. That's when Irv came up with his brilliant idea. He said that since we were both interested in the experiment, and we were both too embarrassed to talk about it with our spouses, why not try it together? At first I said absolutely no, that would be cheating, but he assured me that we would both have our clothes on. It would be fun, he said. He would just tie me up, at worst maybe touch my breasts through my blouse, just to make me feel helpless and him to feel a sense of power at the same time. I again told him no way, but he continued to insist. Finally, after several weeks of refusals, I agreed and told him, "Okay, but only if we both remain in clothes." Jean stood up to pour another cup of coffee. She lifted the coffee pot, gesturing to ask if I wanted more. She poured me a cup and returned to her story. For a long time, that's what we did. I kept my clothes on. Then he said that he couldn't really tie me up the way he wanted if I had all my clothes on, and asked me to strip down to my panties and boobs. Galtera. I was so nervous, I knew it was wrong, but it turned me on so much when he tied me up that I thought it would be even hotter if I was half naked. We did it like this for a couple of months, but Irv became more and more aggressive each time. About a month ago, he tied me up on the bed. I was completely helpless, and then Irv stripped me completely. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, wiping her eyes again. I knew right then that we had gone too far and I should have stopped it, but I just couldn't. She looked me in the eyes for the first time all morning. Do you think it matters? She asked. That he never penetrated me. We never slept, Dalton, never, she said hopefully. I would like to give her the answer that she wanted to hear, but unfortunately, it was impossible. I had to turn away to wipe a stray tear from my cheek. It was difficult to speak. It was difficult to find words. But from what you told me, Jean, it would have happened. That is, you started fully clothed, and 4 or 5 months later, you were already going to please him. You said he would force you, but you know that's a lie. You played, you would do it voluntarily, and the next step would be to sleep with him, Jean. It was only a matter of time. You know it, and I know it. She opened her mouth to say something. I suppose she wanted to assure me that this would not have happened, but I would not believe it. I shook my head and raised my hand at the same time. Jin, it doesn't matter anyway. I can't forgive what you did. I know you didn't want me to find out, but I did, and the truth is, I've never been so hurt in my life. Every time I tried to hug you or kiss you, the pain would return. I'm sorry, dear, but there is no future for us anymore. She burst into tears again. It broke my heart. I had to leave there. I went upstairs and lay down on the bed. I stared at the ceiling as a few tears streamed down the sides of my face. Imagining a future without Jean was something I had never thought about, and it wasn't fun. I must have been there for about 15 or 20 minutes before Jean came in. I'll pack some things and go to my parents, she said in despair. I'm so sorry for everything I did, Dalton. I love you with all my heart. Please believe it. At first, I didn't answer. In my thoughts, I asked myself how this was possible. How can you hurt the person you love so much? I took a deep breath. I still don't understand how you could talk to a man like Irv about sex, and not to me, your own husband. How you can love me with all your heart, as you claim, and yet betray me like that. It just boggles my mind, Jean. I should have been your sexual partner, not him. It was just something I wanted to try. I wasn't even sure if I'd like it, and I just couldn't risk it. At least not until I was sure. I thought I'd try it for a bit, and if I like it, then I'll tell you and see if you're open to it. The problem is that I liked it, but I still couldn't bring myself to talk to you. We never talked about anything like this, and I was just so afraid that you would think badly of me. It was easier to just get on with it with Irv. There was no risk that way. At least that's what I thought. I kept thinking that one day I would pluck up the courage to tell you about my fantasy. Then I would stop this with Irv. She began to cry again. Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry. I helped her pack her suitcases and other things into the car. We looked at each other one last time before she left. We both knew it was the end, really the end. She said she was sorry again, and I watched her drive away, dragging our dreams with her. I felt empty when I returned to the house, looked around the empty rooms and fell to his knees, sobbing like a baby. It took me half an hour or more to cry. It took every ounce of strength, but I finally got up and went to the shower. I hoped it would wash away some of my grief, but it didn't. I was just getting dressed when Jack called. How are you, buddy? Is there going there? He asked. No, she went a little back to her parents. She will live with them, I answered. I heard him sigh sadly. Listen, I'm going to grill some steaks in the backyard a little later. Why don't you come and help us eat one of them? I appreciate the invitation, Jack, but I'm not in the mood to socialize right now, I told him. Dalton, you're going to have some tough times ahead, buddy. Don't close yourself off from your friends. This is the worst thing you can do now. You'll need all the support you can get, old man. Trust me. Listen, come for dinner. A juicy big steak, baked potatoes with sour cream, and my signature salad. If you want to talk, we will listen. If you don't want to, that's okay too. What do you say? He made a compelling argument, and this steak sounded too tempting. Okay, I conceded. I'll come in a while. Oh, I remembered before hanging up. Will the newspaper publish an article? Yes, she will be in tomorrow's issue. They'll put it on the front page of the local news. They even included a photo you took of Dave putting Irv in the squad car. I asked that your name be removed from the signature, I don't think you would like it." "Yes, you're right. Thanks, buddy. I should probably warn Jean," I said. "Warn her? Why?" said Jack. "Damn, let her find out." I sat down, thinking about what Jack had said. Perhaps he is right. I, of course, don't owe her anything. The problem is that until recently, it was my world. Yes, I know, you're right, Jack. This is what should be done, but I can't help but feel a little sorry for her. You saw her face when the policewoman led her out in handcuffs. God, Jack, she was absolutely terrified. No matter how angry and hurt I am, I can't just turn off my feelings. I want to punish her, but not destroy her. Do what you think is right, Dalton. That's exactly what I did. Her father was just helping bring things into the house when she answered the phone. "Hello, Dalton," she answered cautiously. "Hello, listener, I have to warn you. I just spoke to Jack. There will be an article in the Sunday paper about the arrest." I heard her sigh. "Oh God, Dalton, did you really do that?" Her voice became sad again. "I probably should have guessed when I saw Jack there. Okay, thanks for the warning," she said, starting to sob. "I can't even imagine how deeply I hurt you if you were so offended by me. I don't blame you. I know I deserved it. I'm so sorry, love. I pray that one day you can forgive me." Those were her last words, but I heard her cry again before passing out. I was glad she stayed with her parents. At that moment, I wasn't sure who was suffering more, her or me. I guess it didn't matter. It wasn't a competition. Neither of us would ever be the same again after this. For a while, I could forget my problems and spend a pleasant evening at Jack's house. His wife, Lynette, is an absolute delight, and his 2 children kept me busy playing cops and robbers. Of course, I was always a robber. I was shot 3 times and fell to the ground. It was nice to have a distraction. I had been thinking only about Jean's infidelity for the past 4 days, and this evening was a welcome break. When I returned home, it was a little after 10. Between getting up at 4 in the morning, the emotional stress of Jean, and running around Jack's yard hiding from his team of young detectives, I was exhausted. I went upstairs, undressed, and fell asleep before my head hit the pillow. The next morning when I woke up, I was lying facing Jean's side on the bed. My hand was outstretched, and I realized that I must have been looking for it in my dream. I wonder if I'll ever get used to that side of the bed being empty. I left the coffee brewing and then went back upstairs to shower and get dressed. By the time I finished, the Sunday paper was already on my porch. I picked her up, took a cup of my morning drink, and sat down to see how hard Jack had crucified my wife. I took a sip of the nectar to calm my nerves and then pulled out the local section of the newspaper. There it was, right at the top of the front page. Even Mr. Magoo wouldn't have missed it, and next to the story was a clear photograph of Irv getting into a patrol car. I couldn't help but laugh at how kind it was of him to look straight at me while I was taking pictures. Couple arrested for adultery. By Jack Northrup, correspondent. Arlington Hills. After receiving an anonymous call, Arlington Hills police arrested Irving Peterson of Burlington Heights on Friday on charges of alleged adultery. Gene Conrad of Arlington Hills was also arrested. "Most people don't even know this law exists," said Arlington Hills Police Sergeant David Wyland. "Unfortunately for these two, ignorance of the law is no excuse." The couple were taken to the Arlington Hills Police Department to file charges. Illinois is one of 23 states where treason is a crime. The felony is a misdemeanor, and carries a maximum penalty of a fine of up to $2,500 and up to 1 year in prison. The Attorney General's office is not currently commenting on the charges, and it is unclear whether they intend to press charges. I didn't want to frame Irv for the pervert that he was, but I didn't want to hurt Jean further. I made breakfast and then went into my office to work on a 16 by 20 photo of Judy. The shot was so perfect that I didn't need to do anything in Photoshop other than darken the edges a bit to give it a more dramatic look. After that, I wandered around the house a little, washed the car, mowed the lawn. This single life was not for me. I was lonely. I thought Monday would never come, but it finally came. Thank God I had a big photo shoot that kept me busy most of the day. I was packing up my equipment at about 4 o'clock when my cell phone rang. I replied in my standard business tone. Dalton Conrad, I announced. Mr. Conrad, this is Belinda Hastings. I work with your wife. I'm the woman who told you about the motel, she said. I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk to her or not. Yes, Miss Hastings, how can I help you? I was wondering if we could meet for a drink, she said. I thought I could tell you what happened here today. I don't think that's the best idea, I objected. Mr. Conrad, I'm not trying to pick you up or anything. Irv Peterson was fired today, and I thought you should know, in case he tries to attack you or something. Well, that's another matter, of course. I wanted to know about Irv's dismissal. Okay, when and where? I asked. Oh, I'm just about to leave. Could we meet at the Dewdrop Inn on Mannheim and Toohey in about half an hour? I'll be there, I replied. She was sitting in a booth along the wall when I entered. I didn't notice that day in the office, but she was an attractive woman, perhaps a little older than Jean and me, but very well groomed. She smiled as I sat down and waved to the bartender. I looked at the girl as she approached the booth and ordered a light beer before looking back at my unexpected office spy. So, Miss Hastings, you said Irv was fired. Please call me Belle. That's what everyone calls me. I nodded in agreement, and she continued. Yes, today we had quite a lot of excitement in our little office. It all started with Beverly in the morning. She walked into your wife's office and wanted to make sure she saw the news article about her arrest. She had a newspaper clipping and placed it on Jean's desk. I heard Bev say that you blamed her for not telling you about the affair. She was angry with Jean and told her that they were no longer friends. I took a sip of beer while listening. Jean went into the restroom after Bev left her office. I think she went there to have a good cry. Everyone in the office knew about the article, so no one bothered her while she was there. She had only been there a few minutes when Irv burst into the office. He didn't even bother to close the door. He just started yelling about how she and you. He called you her damn husband, ruined his life. I noticed a small smile on her face as she took a sip of her white wine before continuing. You should have heard the nonsense Irv said to his wife that night when he came home, she said with a grin. By the way, who gave him a black eye? Was it you? She asked. Not me, although I would like to. It must have happened in prison, because when they put him in the patrol car, there was not a scratch on him. I have photographs to prove it, I noted. You took that picture where he gets into the police car. What car? I nodded my head, taking another sip of my beer. So you were there when everything happened. Damn, I don't think I could do it. It must have been excruciating. I think the fact that it was your photo that was printed was at least a little revenge. It probably hurts him more than a punch to the eye, she said. I thought back to the moment I took that picture and remembered that I hoped it would ruin his life. With a little luck, perhaps this will happen. Belle continued. Anyway, when he came home, he told his wife that he had been robbed. I think that would explain the bruise. He said the car was used in a robbery. Someone called the police with the license plate number of the car, and the cops brought him in for questioning. Wow, I said. He must have come up with this when he was in prison. Yes, most likely. At any rate, he told her that the car had been found abandoned and that it had been confiscated. I shook my head. It almost rings true, doesn't it? I said. Yeah, and she believed him. Belle started laughing again. Until she saw the photo and read about his arrest in the Sunday paper, I guess the shit really hit the fan and she kicked him out. Couldn't have happened to a more deserving person, as far as I'm concerned, I said. I agree, she giggled. The fact is that he shouted so loudly that Mr. Jacobson came out of his office to see what was happening. You are probably familiar with him. He is responsible for external and internal sales. He told Irv to calm down and go into his office, and the next thing I saw was Irv coming out with a box of his personal items. I think it was less about the newspaper article and more about his attitude. I heard them arguing, and I think Mr. Jacobson was just fed up. What about Jean? Was she fired too? No, as far as I know, she replied, taking another sip of wine. But before Irv left, he told her he was going to get you. She told him that you're a pretty tough guy and he'd better stay away from you. But I don't know if he believed her, so I thought it best to warn you, just in case. Well, I appreciate it, Belle, thank you. I'm really not too worried about Irv. I even hope he'll try something. I'd love to get the other I sorted out too, I snorted. Yes, unless he attacks you from behind with a baseball bat or something, she replied. At first, I didn't think it was a good idea to meet this woman, but I was starting to like her. I looked at her hand and didn't see any rings, so maybe she didn't need to rush home. I really hated eating alone in my kitchen and wondered if she would like to have dinner with me. Ah, maybe I should get a bodyguard, I said with a smile. Would you like to do some extra work for the next hour or so? If you watch my back, I'll pay for dinner. She considered my proposal for a few seconds before answering. That's probably not the best idea, she said, disappointing me. I have no enmity towards Jean. She made bad choices. Really bad ones, and I don't know why, because at my core, I think she's a good person. At least I always had a good relationship with her. Besides, I'm dating someone. This is serious, and I don't want to give anyone the benefit of the doubt. I told her I understood, but wasn't really trying to start anything romantic. I was just hoping for company. She looked at me for another moment. Do you promise not to cry in your beer all evening? She asked with a small smile. We'll go to a restaurant that doesn't even serve beer, I replied, which made her smile a little wider. We really had a good time. I told her about some of my exploits during my newspaper days. She especially liked the story of me trading dirty jokes with the president. I also learned a lot about her. She knew what I was going through because she went through it herself with her ex-husband 5 years ago. In her case, almost all of her neighbors knew about her husband's affair, but no one told her anything. She always wondered if she could have stopped it and perhaps saved her marriage if someone had warned her. I told her that was why I was angry at Beverly. Yes, she was more of Jean's friend than mine, but she claimed to be friends with me too. As I drove Belle back to her car, she extended her hand to me for a farewell shake. I didn't even get a kiss on the cheek. This was normal, however. The last thing I was looking for now was a new relationship. It will be a long time before I'm ready for this. It was still early, and I really didn't want to go home. I saw Jean in every room. I didn't know what to do with myself until I drove past a movie theater with a poster advertising the latest James Bond film. Nobody makes you feel like a man like Bond. The rest of the week was as lonely as the beginning. On Thursday and Friday nights, I went to Plateau's place for a couple of cocktails and a game of pool in the back room. I haven't done this for many years, and it has affected my playing. I lost a little over $50 in those 2 evenings. I kept putting off going to a lawyer. I don't know why. Divorce was inevitable. It was so damn hard to go for it. I decided it was stupid to delay any longer. I'll call my lawyer Monday morning and start the process. Again, I didn't want Jean to be caught off guard, so sometime during the weekend I would have to call and let her know my intentions. I didn't know what would be harder to do, the act of ending the marriage or telling Jean about my decision. I think I'll find out soon. But first I had one more thing to do. On Saturday morning, I was in a good mood for the first time in a long time. On Friday, I stopped by the framer and picked up Judy's portrait. From time to time, when one of my corporate clients ordered a large photograph of their factory or headquarters to be displayed in the lobby, I would use the services of a guy who would make the frames in his basement for half the price of the stores. He designed Judy's portrait beautifully. I regretted that I didn't have my own studio to hang it on the wall. After I picked him up, I stopped at the pharmacy to buy some wrapping paper and a card. I didn't have their phone number, and I couldn't even remember their last name at that moment, so I just decided to take a chance and went to their house. I saw both cars in their driveway, so I took my gift and rang the doorbell. I was still a little nervous about my husband because you never know how people will react. As it turned out, I had nothing to worry about. His name was Carl, and he even had tears in his eyes when Judy unwrapped the gift and he saw what it was. It felt like I had given them $1 million. Neither of them could stop thanking me. They invited me to stay for coffee and, being one who never refuses the nectar of the gods, I agreed. Obviously, I didn't know them very well. I think Jean knew them better than I did, but they turned out to be really nice people. It turned out that Carl came from a rather artistic family. His father was a fairly famous watercolor artist. His sister ran an art gallery downtown, and he himself worked as a graphic designer. Judy was also talented at making handmade jewelry. We had a lot to talk about, and before I knew it, the morning had passed. When I left, I had no doubt that we would become friends. During the week, I also received 42 orders for 8-inch photographs from the 2 football teams I had photographed the previous Saturday, so I spent the rest of the afternoon printing the pictures. At $75 a shot, it was more than worth the effort. I had just finished when I received a call from Jack inviting me back for Sunday dinner. My weekend was really busy. Of course, I knew all this time that I would still have to make one call that I didn't want to make. I put it off until later in the evening. "Hello," I recognized the voice of Jean's mother. "Hello, Mom. Is Jean home?" "Oh, Dalton, I'm so glad you called. I've never seen Jean in such a depressed state. Can she come home?" No, that's not why I'm calling," I said hastily. "I'm afraid this won't happen." There was a short silence at the other end of the line. "Please, Dalton, you have to forgive her. Please, I don't know what she will do if you don't forgive. She told us everything. She made a mistake. Darling, she'll never do it again, I know it." I knew this call would be hard, but I didn't expect her mother to make it even harder. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm not trying to be cruel, but I just don't see how we could fix it after all this. I still love her with all my heart, but every time I see her, I only feel pain. I don't know if this will ever go away," I said sadly. She didn't say anything for almost a minute, and I could have sworn I heard her cry. It was so hard for everyone. "Jean is upstairs, dear. She left her phone here when I saw that it was you calling." "Well, I was hoping." She didn't finish the sentence. "I'll go get her," she said. "Hello," came the voice for which I lived for so many years. "Hello, Jean. How are you?" I said with a lump in my throat. I could hear her struggling with her emotions on the other end of the line. I knew she had an idea of what was going to happen, and that it took a lot of effort for her to just stand there and wait for the curtain to fall. "Why you?" She sobbed a little before taking a breath. "Are you calling with bad news?" "I'm afraid so, Jean. I'm sorry. I love you very much and always will. But there's just no chance for us to be together again," I said regretfully. "Every time I see you, it reminds me of pain. I can't live like this, Jean. I just can't. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. I think it's best for both of us if we end this and start again." She was trying to prepare for this, I could tell. "Okay," she said in such a weak voice that I could barely hear her. "I won't resist, honey. I won't even hire a lawyer. Do as you see fit." "Dalton, I love you too, my dear. I will never forgive myself for what I did to you, but I pray that someday you will be able to forgive me." She hung up without saying another word. She sounded unwell. I was really worried. She took it very hard. I called the home phone to alert her parents to keep an eye on her. This time her father answered the phone. I told him about our conversation. He said her mother was upstairs with her and promised to keep a close eye on her. Then he expressed his regret too. He said he understood my decision. In similar circumstances, he said that he would have done the same thing, but that did not lessen the suffering that everyone felt. I agreed. I called my lawyer on Monday morning to make an appointment, but due to his schedule and mine, I was only able to meet with him on Wednesday. Jean kept her word. Her father told me that she signed the divorce papers without even reading them. Since she couldn't afford to pay for the house, I bought her half. Jean took the money and will move into the apartment when she is ready. Even though I made almost 10 times more than she did, Jean refused any support the court wanted to give her. From this point on, we only had to wait 6 months for the final decision of the court. Everything went pretty smoothly for the next 3 months until my phone rang. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.